Welcome back to another episode of A Transformed Life, a podcast. I'm your host, Hope Rose, and I'm so delighted that you are joining me today for this. I hope you can hear the birds singing if you're listening to this. They bring me so much joy and happiness, and one of my favorite things is in nature. So this is your invitation to put yourself in nature as much as possible and hear the birds. Take out those headphones and tune into nature. Tune into Mother Earth and the rhythm and the frequency of that. It is incredibly healing, energizing, life-giving, grounding, all of the things. A few housekeeping items before we dive into today's episode, which I am super excited to share with you. First, if you're listening to this, please, 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 and thank you for leaving a 5-star review on whatever platform you are listening to. That really helps this show, put it into more users' feeds, the algorithm gods. Yes. And it's a way to support me. I don't make any money off of this show. And so your energetic exchange of leaving a 5-star review or subscribing on YouTube is incredibly helpful. And I'm very grateful to receive those blessings. If you would like further support, guidance, or mentorship, please check out Heal by Foundations. It is a product that I created to help you build one healthy habit every 30 days in 30 days. It's very focused. It's a beautiful deck of cards. Everyone is especially curated for the focus theme that month, and it's an amazing way to bring health, healing, hope into your life, into your ecosystem. And there's all kinds of little critters on my screen right here. And yeah, would greatly appreciate your support in that. I will include a link in the show notes. And I would love to hear from you. What topics would you like me to talk about in upcoming shows? So please drop me an email or send me a message on Instagram. Instagram is @HopeRoseSpeaks, and same for YouTube. All right, let us dive into the topic for today, which is, drumroll, ending spanking is not, quote unquote, soft parenting. We're going to be talking about something that can stir up a lot of opinions, maybe even emotion. It could be triggering. Perhaps there's defensiveness and, yeah, strong emotions. And we are talking about spanking. Yes, the S word. And more specifically, we are talking about the idea that when a parent ends up spanking, they have somehow become weak, permissive, passive, or soft. And I really want to say this clearly from the beginning. Ending spanking is not soft parenting. It is not weak parenting. It is not permissive parenting. It is not parenting without boundaries, structure, or leadership. In fact, in many cases, ending spanking requires far more strength, far more self-control, self-awareness, and far more maturity than continuing it. Because hitting a child may feel fast in the moment. It may feel familiar. It may feel effective in the immediate moment. However, immediate compliance is not the same thing as long-term health and long-term emotional health of the child and for the parent as well. And so this is what I want to chat with you today. I want to talk about what real strength in parenting actually looks like. I want to share with you why so many parents confuse fear with respect. And I want to have this dialogue with you about why choosing not to use physical punishment is not a lowering of standards. It is actually a raising of consciousness and elevating your ability to parent in aligned ways. Let me say that again. Choosing not to use physical punishment is not a lowering of standards. It is a raising of consciousness. So let's dive in. When people hear the phrase don't spank, what some of them immediately hear is, so you just let kids do whatever they want? There are no consequences? Kids just run the house now? Kids just walk all over you? Oh, you just talk sweetly while your child is completely out of control? And that is all false binary. Either you dominate your child physically or you surrender all authority. That is not truth. It's also very dismissive. It's very defensive. There's another option, another way, another solution. You can be deeply loving and deeply firm. You can be compassionate and clear. You can hold the line without using pain. You can correct behavior without humiliating the child. And you can lead without striking fear into a nervous system that is still developing. That is not softness, my friend. That is skill. For many people, it is a skill that they have never received themselves. So many adults were raised to believe that spanking was normal. It's just what we do. It's in the Bible. It's what my parents did, so I'm going to continue. Some were told I was spanked and I turned out fine. Others were told this hurts me more than it hurts you. Raise your hand if you've heard that one. It hurts me more than it hurts you. Extremely manipulative. That is not a conscious parent saying that. It is blaming. It is victim consciousness. It is offloading responsibility. It's really the adult projecting that this actually hurts you more than it hurts me, and I'm okay with that. It's really dark and really twisted and messed up. Others were told that physical punishment was necessary to teach obedience, character, or respect. And so many of us are now looking back and asking a deeper question, and I'm so grateful for that. Did it actually teach respect, or did it teach fear, compliance? Did it teach internal discipline, or did it teach external compliance? Did it teach emotional regulation, or did it teach that the bigger, stronger person gets to use pain when they are frustrated? And even did it model emotional regulation? When a parent is hitting, they are not in control, and they can seem in control on the outside of their emotions, and it's just simply false. Whenever a parent is hitting a child, which is what spanking is violence. It is hitting a person younger than you. It's using violence as control, power and control. And no matter if you are a Christian parent and you are still steeped in that dogma that spanking is biblical, which it is not, please go back and listen to that podcast. The parent is modeling something that God does not approve of, does not align with love, kindness, gentleness, or self-control whatsoever. And so all of these questions really matter and they add up. Children are always learning. The question is not whether they are learning. The question is what they are learning. So when a child is hit, i.e. spanked, they may stop the behavior in that moment. Yes, that can happen. And it usually typically happens again. And what stopped it? Was it understanding? Was it connection? Was it internalized wisdom? Or was it fear? A child who stops because they are afraid of being hurt has not necessarily learned why the behavior was wrong in the first place. They may have simply learned that power wins. They have learned to avoid getting caught, which again can lead to addictions and hiding things in adult life. They have learned to disconnect from their feelings and emotions. And that is why we have so many people with DSM 5 disorders today, is because, they are raised that, boys don't cry, don't show emotions. They may have also learned that the people who love them can cause them severe pain when those people feel overwhelmed. And this is not nothing. This lands in the body. And this is why so many people are disconnected from their body. They can't feel anything. They're not connected to self. And I think this is where the conversation must mature, because too many people reduce parenting to one question: did the child stop? That is a very low bar. And when you set the bar low, you're going to trip over it every single time. The more aligned questions are: what did the child absorb? What happened in the nervous system? What happened to trust? What model of power was just demonstrated? What pattern is being rehearsed in this family line? And even a question for the parent of, like, what am I modeling? Where are my emotions? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling triggered in this moment? Because parenting is never simply behavior management. Parenting is formation, and parenting can be a great insight into the patterns and the habits and the hangups that you have. Just like business, just like being in a romantic partnership, it will bring up your triggers, your core wounds, your core things that activate you. Same with parenting. Your children are little mirrors into your psyche. And when they trigger you, the answer is not to use violence and hitting, spanking on them. It is for you to come into regulation for yourself, for you to do the deep inner work of what is going on in your internal inner world. So that way you can be a healthy mind, body, spirit parent. You have been entrusted to form a human being's relationship to authority, to self, to emotion, to repair, to truth, to power, to safety, to love, to God. It is a huge responsibility not to be taken lightly. It is a sacred responsibility. I'll say that again. It is a tremendous sacred responsibility. And when we take that seriously, then we must be willing to examine methods that may produce short-term obedience at the cost of deeper harm. I want to say something really important here. This is not about shaming parents. Many parents who spank are not necessarily monsters. They are overwhelmed. They are dysregulated. They are repeating what was modeled for them. They are parenting without enough support. They are operating from stress, exhaustion, financial pressure, their own trauma, nervous system overload, inherited conditioning. And they are also, hitting, i.e., spanking, because they are still under this false assumption that it's biblical. It's not. Or that my parents did it, my great-grandparents did it, my whole lineage has done it, and we're all fine. That is not true. Look at the world. We have 3.4 women a day being killed by former or current intimate partners. And violence in the home must stop. Whether it's yelling, screaming, spanking, hitting, financial abuse, it needs to stop. And all of this deserves compassion. Compassion does not require lying. We can have compassion for parents and still tell the truth that hitting children is not the highest path. We can acknowledge how hard parenting is and still say that using pain as punishment is not the standard. We want to keep passing forward. I want to repeat that. Make sure you heard this. We can acknowledge how hard parenting is and still say that using pain as punishment is not the standard we want to keep passing forward. Remember, we are cycle breakers, not cycle continuers. Honestly, one of the strongest things a parent can do is to pause and say, this ends with me now. And that is strength, and that is leadership. And that is what breaking a generational pattern looks like. It does not always look polished, because sometimes it looks like taking a breath in the bathroom so you don't explode. Sometimes it looks like walking away for 30 seconds to regulate yourself. Sometimes it looks like apologizing after you lost your temper. Sometimes it looks like learning tools you were never taught. Sometimes it looks like getting a coach, mentor, a guide to walk you through reparenting yourself so that way you can parent your children in health and love and healing. Maybe it looks like feeling your own rage, grief, helplessness, and memories rise to the surface because your child's behavior is touching the very place in you that you were never safely held. And this work is not soft. This work is brave. A lot of people call nonviolent parenting soft because they confuse force with strength. Force is not the highest form of power. Power is actually gentle, loving, and kind because power is energetic. It's inside you. It's not external force. And that's what coercive control is so detrimental. Like the the ex I was with, the father of my child, is extremely controlling, coercive control. He's, labeled an abuser. And, he learned that from his lineage, unfortunately. And until he gets the help he needs to rewire and change his trajectory, he's going to continue that cycle. And I know for me in my lineage, I am a cycle breaker, and you can declare that today. So power is not sending nasty messages, exerting your control over someone else. I work a lot with single moms who are dealing with abusive exes, fathers of their children. And it's just so shocking to me how wounded these fathers are. And it's really enlightening and eye-opening of how these fathers, regardless of their age, have never done the inner work, and their wounded ego is running the show. And doing the inner work is what is required to raise healthy generations. It's looking deep within inside yourself, the things that are in the shadows in the closet. It's examining every little millimeter of your life and taking responsibility and self-reflection and being in harmony with yourself. And these abusive fathers simply refuse to be held accountable to themselves. And they continue this harm for, unfortunately, the children. Anyway, I digress. Back to our topic. So that all I have to say is, real power is staying anchored when you are triggered. Real power is holding a boundary without becoming cruel. Real power is keeping your authority without making a child afraid of your body, of your hands being used as weapons. Real power is being able to say, no, that is not okay, and mean it fully without needing to escalate into fear or pain. That is actual authority. And children do need authority. And I want to be clear on that too. Children, do require boundaries, guidance, correction with love, kindness, care, compassion. And children require adults, parents who are willing to be adults, not younger versions of themselves that are running the show. And so many parents, abusive fathers, are letting their wounded younger self run the show. And that's why we have so much violence, domestic violence, intimate partner violence in our society as a global collective. So this conversation is not about removing standards. It is about raising the standard for how those standards are held. A parent can be very firm without spanking. A parent can say any of these things. Hitting is not acceptable. You may not scream in my face. No, we don't throw things. No, we don't destroy property. No, you may not speak that way. You are allowed to be upset. You are not allowed to become harmful. I am here. I will help you through this, and I will still hold the boundary. And this is not permissive. It is clear, grounded, and ultimately that is powerful leadership. And honestly, this requires more consistency than spanking does. Spanking is just like, in the moment. It's, spanking is kind of like this shortcut. You don't have any other tools in your toolbox, and so you just resort to spanking, to violence. And so when a parent feels out of control, the child is out of control, and physical punishment becomes the fast way to end the behavior of whatever is happening in the moment. And fast is not always the wise way. So the deeper work is slower. It is teaching, repetition, modeling, regulation, repair, follow through. Consequences without violence, staying present long enough for the child to actually build capacity rather than merely submitting under threat. And a quick note on consequence. I use that word because people, again, are familiar with it. Consequence is not, timeout. If you don't do X, Y is going to happen, because that's just another form of misaligned power and control. You have guidelines, not consequences. You have boundaries, not consequences. And so this kind of parenting requires more from the adult. And it's exactly why I reject the label soft. Sometimes people say, well, kids these days have no respect because parents stopped spanking. That's simply not true. Lack of spanking is not the cause of cultural disorder. If spanking worked, would we have the violence rates that we do here in our country? Let's just say America for this podcast purposes, but globally. Would we have war if spanking worked? Would we have domestic violence, 3.4 women a day being killed by former or current intimate partners? No, spanking doesn't work. And think about all of the violence that, women and mothers and children are experiencing that are not reported. Every 6 days, a child is killed by a parent going through custody court, family court. Typically, the father is the perpetrator in that. So spanking doesn't work. Violence does not work. Violence is never the answer. And so this is, a big issue. The issue is not that children are no longer being hit. The issue is that many adults themselves were never taught how to regulate emotion, hold boundaries, speak with clarity, repair relationship, or lead without domination or power control. And that is the much deeper issue we must address. So if anything, many adults are now trying to build those skills for the very first time. That is not weakness, and this is simply evolution. We have to stop pretending that fear-based obedience is the gold standard. A child can obey you and not trust you or love you. A child can comply and still feel disconnected. A child can become outwardly, quote unquote, good, while inwardly anxious, shut down, resentful, or split off from their own feelings, disassociation. And so, no, I am not impressed. I am not impressed by obedience alone. I care about what kind of human is being formed. Is the child learning honesty? Is the child learning emotional literacy? Is a child learning that mistakes can be corrected without violence? Is the child learning to take responsibility without collapsing into shame? Is the child learning that authority can be safe? Is the child learning how to repair? Is the child learning how to heal? What are you modeling for the child? And these are the kinds of questions that absolutely matter in parenting conversations. This is especially important when we remember that children are not just small adults. They are developing human beings with immature brains, mature impulse control, mature emotional regulation, and a deep dependence on the adults around them for co-regulation and safety. So when a child is acting out, yes, sometimes there is defiance. Yes, sometimes there is testing. Yes, sometimes there are behavior problems that require strong intervention. And also, underneath that behavior is something else: overstimulation, exhaustion, abuse of fathers, hunger, disconnection, stress, confusion, lack of skills, sensory overload, transition difficulty, unprocessed emotion, especially if children are living with an abusive parent. I will say typically an abusive father. I could be power control, coercive control, the whole power dynamic. It's extremely damaging to the child. And a little personal story here, the father of my child is currently teaching him to be disrespectful, to be extremely rude to me. And my child is just turned 8, and his behavior is quite alarming, and it is being taught from his father. And his father doesn't have proper aligned respect and honor for mothers and women. And so he's continuing to pass this on, unfortunately, to my son. And my son is reaping the consequences of that. And it's extremely damaging psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, physically, psychologically. And this is a call for, again, I'm going to put this little note in here for abusive fathers. Please stop harming our children, our future generations. Please go heal yourself, do the inner work that is required of you to break the cycles. Your power and control does not lead to happiness, to love, to success. It leads to continued internal dysregulation and destruction, as well as external, too. They are miserable human beings. They have never dealt with their ego, their wounded little boy, and it is high time that every father become a healed father. So this doesn't, excuse harmful behavior. Apologies. I needed to take a drink. Got my water with me. So once you understand that behavior is communication, punishment stops looking like the only tool. The work becomes with these questions: what is happening here? What skill is missing? What boundary is required? What support is required? What boundary makes sense in this moment? How do I remain the regulated leader in this moment without abandoning connection? This is a whole new ballpark of parenting. And again, it's simple, not easy. It's much easier to talk tough about kids needing spanking than it is to actually build your inner muscle to parent differently. So if you are a parent trying to end spanking, I want to say this directly: you're not failing because you want another way. You are not weak because you want your child to feel safe with you. You're not permissive because you care about the nervous system, attachment, and long-term formation of character. You're not too soft because you refuse to use pain as your proof of authority. You may, in fact, be doing some of the strongest work of your life and up to this point of your lineage. You may be confronting what was normalized in your own childhood. You may be grieving what you did not receive. You may be facing your own triggers in real time. Absolutely. I don't think it's a maybe. It is definitely, yes, you are. And you are learning how to stay steady when everything in you wants to react. And that is strength. So if you've spanked before and you now kind of feel a little call it out, a little conviction, let me say this too. Conviction is not the same as condemnation. You do not require shame to change. You require honesty, responsibility, and repair. You can say, I see this differently now. I do not want to keep doing this. I am learning another way. And then apologize to your child, rebuild their trust, and you interrupt the pattern. It is never too late to change the tone of your home. In fact, one of the most powerful things a child can experience is a parent who is humble enough to repair. A parent who can say, I was wrong. You did not deserve that. I am working on this too. I love you. We are going to learn an aligned way. And that does not weaken your authority. It actually deepens it because now your authority is rooted in integrity, not intimidation. And that is what I want more families to understand. The opposite of spanking is not chaos. The opposite of spanking is not passivity. And the opposite of spanking is not children ruling the home. The alternative is conscious leadership, regulated authority, firm, clear, connected parenting, consequence without violence, raising children who learn both boundaries and safety. And that is not soft. That is powerful. This is maturity. And this is the kind of parenting that requires something of us. And maybe that is why so many people resist it, because it asks more of us as the adult. It requires the adult to heal, to slow down, to become self-aware, to face their demons, their dragons, the aspects, the part of themselves that they don't want to face. It asks the adult, the parent, to separate discipline from domination. It asks and requires the adult to lead, not simply control. And some people would rather call that soft than do the deep inner work, because doing the deeper inner work is difficult. It's acknowledging things about yourself that maybe aren't so pleasant. And when you start doing the inner work, you will have more peace and more regulation on the back end of that. And that's what people want. You have to go through the mud to reap the harvest. So, names do not change truth. Ending spanking is not soft parenting. It is stronger parenting, conscious, skillful, regulated, responsible, healed parenting. It is parenting that asks not just how do I stop this behavior right now, and who is my child becoming? Who am I becoming in the process? And that is a really aligned question. Maybe that is a question I want to leave with you today. When your child is struggling, what kind of power do you want to model? Power that dominates with fear, control, intimidation, or power that leads from love, kindness, compassion, curiosity? Power that frightens or power that anchors? Power that silences or power that models? Because children are always learning from us. And the way we hold power in the home becomes part of what they carry into the world. So no, ending spanking is not soft. It is a different kind of strength that the world is not used to. And I invite you to join me in on this mission of modeling healed parenting. A deeper kind of parenting, a cleaner kind of parenting, a kind parenting rooted not in fear and in truth, safety, and leadership. Because I believe that kind of strength will change families and future generations and heal lineages. If this episode spoke to you, please share it with a parent who is trying to do things differently. Share it with someone who is brave enough to question what was normalized, and share it with someone who needs permission to believe that firm and loving can coexist together. And it's, such important work to to go on the healing journey, to do the deep inner work, and use your current parenting status as an opportunity for your own healing. What is triggering in you? What is causing the need to have power and control over the mother of your child, over other women, to be dominant and abusive, to use spanking in your home as a form of, punishment because you can't control yourself. And when we use force, violence in the home, it is going to continue to spread through our communities and our country and our cities and our nation. And I'm wondering, don't you want to have healed people? Wouldn't it be great if we would not have any strife and people who are always have to be in power and control? And when we heal whatever is in within us, it is then that we have healed homes, healed lives, and healed future generations. And so that is my dream. That is my vision. That is part of what I'm in service to. And I thank you for joining me on this episode today. Please share it with a friend, share it on your socials, and tag me on it too. Don't forget to subscribe to Heal by Foundations. The link is in the show notes. If you need any support or guidance, please reach out. I am happy to support you or give you referrals to someone who can guide you in your parenting, in your personal inner work journey. We need more healed humans than ever before. Have a beautiful day. I will see you next week.